Well, hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Disrupt Your Money. I am super excited for today's episode because I am joined by my dear friend, client, community member, fitness, person who keeps me in line, Coach Mac. Coach Mac, welcome. I'm so excited that you're
Thank
here today.
you. Thank you. Thanks for
Uh,
having me. I'm excited for this chat.
yeah, absolutely. So let's start this off because not everybody knows who you are, which is a tragedy. But tell folks who you are, what you do, and yeah, give us the scoop.
Yes, I am, as you said, I am Coach Mac. I am the founding health coach of my company. It's called Running with Bacon, which is actually the name of my company. I get a lot of laughs and a lot of eyebrows raised, but yes, it's actually the name of my company. And I help women be their strongest and fittest selves. And not for vanity reasons, although that's part of it. Let's be real. Who doesn't want to look good? But it's mostly to show up for life more fully as a mom, as an entrepreneur, as a wife, daughter, friend, all of those things. That's the part that really is the most impactful versus just, having your butt look good in a pair of jeans.
Which is important, but not as
Yes.
important.
Yes, it is
Well,
important.
and yeah, and one of the things that I've always loved about you is that you make fitness so approachable. And I think, you and I both are in industries where we are helping people with things that they don't really want to talk about. Like people don't want to talk about their money. They don't want to talk about, fitness and health and all that. It's these super uncomfortable conversations. And you make it easy to do this stuff. And one of the ways, I'm just going to dive right in because one of the
Mhm.
ways that you do this is through, instead of focusing on, diets or gimmicks or whatever, you focus on habit building and how do we create something that is going to go much longer lasting than, I don't know, a 30-day challenge or a boot camp or something like that. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on why habits are so important and kind of how we start to create them in these uncomfortable areas of our lives so that we can see this progress.
Yeah, I think the reason that you and we clicked so well, like you said, because we're in similar industries, and that the things that we're coaching it's behavior. When it really comes down to it, it is behavior. It's the things that we do consistently day in and day out. Like you said, it's not like a 10-day bums and tums challenge, which I have those, by the way. So I'm not against them, but those are not the things that create the lifelong changes. In my case, to help women lose weight, feel their best, be their strongest. In your case, be financially savvy, save for retirement, be comfortable in their lifestyle, all of those things. It's the behaviors that we do. And one of the ways that I like to, hack, it's such a goofy word. People use hacks all the time now. But when you are able to leverage habits to work for you, it takes so much of the effort and I guess, you don't need motivation. You don't have to continue talking yourself into it every single time it comes down to working out, or in your case, like doing a money meeting or uploading receipts or whatever. You don't have, it takes no convincing when you create a habit, which is, when it comes down to it, just a type of behavior. So I love leveraging them to take out most of the effort, because habits happen automatically. That's the beauty of them. And when we can leverage that and use that in these areas that we want to change, but it's kind of hard to change, it just makes it easier for us.
I love that you talk about behavior because I don't think I've ever really used that word in my business, but it's so spot on to the work that we do. We're really looking at what are our current behaviors and how do we adapt them to get the goal that we want. So I love that focus. And I'm curious because you talk about habits, setting them up in a way so that it's easy. It makes it easy to do so you don't have to think about it. Habits feel really hard to me. You know this. You've been with me for years. You know that I struggle with this. So how do you set up and start habits in a way that does make them feel easy and also has them be effective, that people stick with them?
Yeah, it's a fine line between easy and effective, because usually when we're setting up habits, we need them to be easier than we think. And I'm talking minuscule, like toddler style easy. And most of us as grown adults were like, that is not effective. Like Coach Mac, seriously, 2 minutes is not going to do anything. And I'm not arguing with you in the fact that, yeah, like 2 minute workout isn't going to get your cardio up. You're not going to be able to like show markers of, increased VO2 and all that stuff. Like I get it. 2 minutes isn't going to do that. But we're not starting off with the end goal. We're starting off at the beginning to set up for success. And much like a lot of diets and workout programs and things like that set you up, like from the start, you're at 100%. They kind of have a setup to fail. And I'm assuming it's pretty similar in the money industry or business. Like, if you're like, oh, max out your Roth IRA, max out your retirement, like do all this stuff. It's like, whoa, very few people can just start there with maxing out everything and being on point and having everything like organized and all this. So like, no, make it so easy. And you've coached on this. And it's something I've done in my business of paying yourself, even if it's $1, and then increasing and increasing. It sounds so silly to just pay yourself $1 or to just walk for 5 minutes. But in James Clear's book, it's called Atomic Habits. He has this one line talking about how to start habits. And he says, you have to first master the art of showing up. Like you have to just do the thing, because even if it's not perfect, you're still doing the thing. And then you can increase it, you can improve it, you can, keep building on it. But until you actually show up, AKA do the thing, even the smallest, most pared down version, you still just have to start somewhere.
I'm so glad you talked about just doing the thing, because I think that it's certainly where I struggled in my fitness journey. And I know it's where a lot of people struggle with their money stuff, because they don't want to even deal with it. They don't want to look at the numbers. They don't want to open the credit card statement. They don't, whatever. It just feels so overwhelming. And I get that. I feel that too some days. And so, what do you say to the person who's like, that's great, but I'm struggling with even showing up? I don't know how to even do the thing, let alone build a habit out of it.
There are, well, two places. Number one, I'd say hire a coach because often it is easier to show up for other people first than it is to show up for ourselves. So if you can have a coach, have some type of accountability, something like that, that will get you into that habit of showing up, even if it's for someone else first. And then you'll eventually get to the point where it feels like, man, I'm really glad I did that. I'm like, you're building the confidence and the momentum, and it gets easier to show up for yourself. So that's kind of part one. Part two would be to make it easier. And I know in your case, because I was there in my business, when you're starting out, it just feels so overwhelming. There's reports, there's credit card statements, there's receipts, there's taxes, there's budgeting, there's all the things. Instead of attacking it like an elephant, that quote, eat an elephant one bite at a time or something like that. It's the same thing with money stuff, with health stuff, because if you approach everything with the mindset of trying to do all the things all at once, I mean, every business owner knows you just can't. It's not possible. And so if you can start somewhere, pick one area, maybe it's looking at the credit card statement each month or each week, not even doing anything, but just looking at it, like opening the PDF, opening your bank app, just looking at it and nothing else. Start smaller than you think and build that habit. Like I've had people who they've had to master the art of showing up at the gym by just driving to the gym, not even going in, but like just making it part of a stop on their way home from work. They pull into the gym parking lot, sit there and like, okay, check the box today, and then drive on home. And then you work into actually going into the gym and then doing a workout. But until it becomes part of your routine, it's really hard to just go all out 100% and like this ideal habit that we have built up in our head. We don't start there. You have to start so much smaller.
Yeah, I mean, that hits right here for me, because that's definitely, in fact, I love the idea about just driving to the gym and just sitting there, because I'm the kind of person who would do that. And after a few days, I'd be like, this is stupid. I'm just going to go in and do something. Like
Yeah.
like I feel like I need to do something. But it's interesting. It's making me think, and a lot of folks in our community know, one of the things I've struggled with money over the last year in my whole household is our personal spending, what we spend every month. And we never really had a good system for it. And what I started doing about a year ago was every single morning, pulling up the credit card and adding our transactions to our budget and seeing where we're at every single day. And at first, it was a daily activity that, it only took me 10 to 15 minutes, but it felt heavy. It felt like, oh, I gotta do this every day. But what I found was, when I showed up every day, it was so much easier because there were no surprises. There was none of this like, oh, I haven't looked in a week, So I don't know what's going to be there. I was like, I looked yesterday. How bad could it be? Like I couldn't have done that much damage in 24 hours, right? And I think it's the same thing with money stuff, with fitness, with whatever. It's when you don't do it for so long and then it's like, oh, it just feels so hard. So I love that idea of even if it's just driving to the gym, even if it's just putting your sneakers on, just something every day to just stay in that practice
Hmm.
of doing it. I just think it takes that scary out of it a bit.
Yeah. And it allows you to still check the box. Like I'm assuming as a numbers person, you are very like, you want all the boxes to be checked, you want everything to match up, everything to be lined up. And most of us have that sort of mentality about habits like, oh, I missed today. I may as well miss tomorrow, because, well, I already missed. But if you can find a way, it doesn't matter if it's not the perfect thing, but if you can find a way to check the box, no matter what it is, and then keep the bar low. This is something we forget is to keep the bar low. So if you set out and you say, I'm going to walk 5 minutes every single day, and after 6 months, you are crushing it and you're like up to 20 or even 30 minutes a day. And then one day rolls around where you are just not feeling it. And you're like, I can't walk 30 minutes. It's not happening. I don't have the time. I'm so stressed, all this stuff. Walk the 5 minutes, keep your bar low, like stop raising your standard for what accomplishing the thing is so that you can keep that streak alive. Because I love a good streak. Like I'm like, give me the challenge of like trying to get, check out the box for the whole week, like a 30-day, whatever. I will do it. But if we keep raising the bar, perfection is the only end game there. And we all know that's not realistic. So if your goal in finances is just to look at your reports every week, and then with Meg's coaching and everything she teaches, you're like killing it and you're doing all this stuff or whatever, whatever. And then you have a bad month, a stressful month, whatever, go back to just look at the reports. You don't have to keep holding yourself to that higher and higher and higher standard because it's just not realistic. And so keep your bar low so that your success rate continues. You won't feel like a failure as long as you get to check that box.
I love that as a box checker. I love that very, very much. I have a lot of boxes and a lot of lists. But one thing I also love about the work that you do is you really focus on making things accessible. And like I know you and I have talked about when I've struggled, you're like, well, could you do it this way? Could you do it this way? Like, how do you fit it in? And I think with money, it's the same thing. And one of the things I've actually been doing a lot over this last year, as I've been focusing on simplifying my whole life, not just my money or my health, is to with anything that isn't working, I'm either not doing it consistently or it's not feeling satisfying or whatever. I'm asking myself the question, do I have to do it this way? Like, yeah, I've been doing it this way for a long time, but that's not working. So do I have to do it this way? And I think that's what you do a lot in your work is, hey, there's a bunch of other ways to get to this end goal, which was really hard for my mind because I was like, no, tell me exactly what I need to do. And you're like, well, there's not one right answer. You can, there's
Mhm.
all these different options. And it's the same thing with money. If sitting down at your desk to do your accounting every week isn't working, is there an app? Maybe you can do it on the go when you're waiting for your kids in the pickup line. Like what works for you doesn't have to be this one way that somebody, on TikTok is preaching or whatever. So I'm just kind of curious, like if you can talk a little bit about that, like how we become adaptable and make things more accessible for ourselves. Because I sometimes think we're making it harder than it needs to be.
Oh, yes. Yes, we are. But I think it goes back to we have so many systems, or I guess we hear about so many systems for evaluating and reflecting and journaling and all types of things like that to figure out, what's going on inside of our head. Do we, like the way that the past 3 months of our life went and all this stuff? And we don't actually give very much thought to our habits, our typical behaviors, our routines, because they are just that. They are routines. We don't have to give them very much mental energy, but that also can be of disservice when they are habits and behaviors that we don't want anymore or maybe aren't optimal anymore. Because just like your goals change, like your financial goals, your health goals, your life goals, all that, they change. Well, so then do your habits. But most of us, we forget that part. We forget to say, hey, what habits really worked in my life? How can I incorporate them now, even though life has changed, even though this has changed in my business? Like maybe you've added an employee or two. And so the way that you do your number stuff changes from when it was just you. Okay, but if you had things that really worked for you when it was just you, how can you incorporate those in a different way now and then make it incorporate it back into your routine? So we forget that just because something is habitual doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be evaluated. Like, I know you have kids. If your audience has kids too, every time school year changes from summer to school year, stuff changes. Like schedules change, sleep, like bedtime routines, all that stuff changes. And so if you have things that you really enjoyed that you did over the summer that you want to somehow incorporate them during the school year, you have to actually give it some thought. But we don't think about that when things change in our business or with our health. You have to actually be like, stuff has changed. How can I keep the stuff that was working in this new environment? And what do I maybe not need anymore in this new environment that I could alter in some way? But just because it's a subconscious process, because it's habitual, doesn't mean that it doesn't need evaluation, just like other areas of our lives.
I love it. I love to evaluate things. So you're speaking my love language. So I'm curious now. I want to make the connection between what you do in this habit work and money. And I would love, if you're okay with it, if you share a little bit about your financial journey, where you were when you first started your business, where you're at now, and how you used habits to see that progress that you've achieved.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I am a numbers person. I do like spreadsheets. So, this is maybe not like most of your listeners. However, when I was first starting out, so I've pretty much been a fan of Meg's and a client of Meg's since the beginning of my business. And that doesn't mean it was always like sunshine and rainbows because the beginning was not pretty. But after listening to Meg, I was able to find systems and put things in place that really worked for me and my business. And just because I loved the numbers stuff doesn't mean I knew what it meant or how to make it work in my business. Like, just because I understood the math of profit, revenue, expense, like all, like I understood it, but that doesn't mean I necessarily knew what that meant in terms of a healthy business or the direction I want to take my business. So with Meg's help, I was able to figure all that stuff out and put systems in place. And if you are someone who struggles to build habits or to even to stick to them, finance is in a very cool place right now where you can automate so much stuff. And that's what I've used Meg for in terms of her recommendations for the softwares, like my bank, my accounting software. Anything Meg told me, I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. Like, let's set it up because then I don't have to think about it anymore. And even as a numbers person, the fact that I don't have to think about my numbers all the time is amazing. Like, duh, I knew I had to save for taxes, but I'm like, well, how much? How do I do that? Where do I put that money? Like all this stuff. But thanks to Meg's help, I was just like, hey, you can set this up. And so that it automatically goes in there and you can put whatever percent you want. And then poof, come tax time, you got money to pay them. And it's like, that's the type of stuff that with technology, you can really leverage what we wish our habits would be. You can just have technology do it for you. So I don't even know that it's necessarily that I've built up these amazing habits in my business. I mean, I have in some sense, in some degree, like money meetings. I do those religiously now, but I let technology do so much more of the work because I can, and because there are so many other things I'd rather devote my mental energy to that it's taken me the process. It's been almost 5 years now, but I'm able to be in a place where when I need to go look at my numbers each month, I know exactly what I'm looking at and what I'm looking for. But if I don't then do anything in between, it's still okay. It's all happening because I've set everything up to work in the background. So it is a process, but it's one that is so worth it. And like I said, use technology to build those habits for you so
Yeah.
that you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's amazing.
I love that. And I think that is so much a part of the work we do with folks is helping you get those systems set up. And what I really heard from you when you were speaking is this feeling now of comfort and sort of ease, knowing that everything is working as it should be. And I feel the same way in my business and in my personal life now that I kind of have all my systems figured out. I'm like, I don't panic anymore.
Mhm.
I know that and it doesn't mean I don't have to check. And of course, I'm always, we're talking about evaluating systems. I'm always thinking about that. But I think if folks can remember that once you kind of get over that hurdle of starting, it's so nice on the other side when you have,
Hmm.
and it's the same thing with health too, like when you have a system that's working for you, because then it just becomes so natural. It's not something that needs to suck all of this energy out of you anymore, which I think is really wonderful. Now
Yeah.
I'm curious because I think one of the things, and coming kind of bringing it back to this podcast and what this podcast is all about, not just money, but the way money works in our society and the inequities of it. And one of the things that I think especially women deal with when it comes to their health is that we're constantly being bombarded by messages that are harmful, or by a society that's set up in a way that's harmful. We're overwhelmed, we're overworked, we're overburdened. We're told we need to be skinny. We're told we need to do this and do that. Our society certainly doesn't prioritize healthy foods or healthy lifestyles. Like, for the person who's sitting there thinking, yeah, this is great, but I don't have the time, I don't have the money, like I don't, like I'm barely hanging on. How do I get started, thinking about my health? How do I take that first step when it feels like the world is literally working against me?
It's going to sound so simple, and you're going to be like, Coach Mac, that's not helpful, but I'm going to say it anyways. Because the reality is you have to just start. And again, I know that for someone saying, yeah, but how do I start? Where do I start? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if you decide to drink an extra 8 ounces of water, or if you decide to cut out one fried food per week, or if you decide to walk an extra mile this month, or whatever, get an extra 30 minutes of sleep. Wherever you start, it's really not that important. What is the most important thing is that you start. So if you're feeling so overwhelmed, maybe you take 30 seconds and take 3 giant deep breaths, one in, one out. Like, seriously, start there. Start with something so that you can say, okay, I did one thing today that I feel really good about for my health, for myself. Same thing financially. I don't know this for a fact, so hopefully I'm right. But my guess is it doesn't actually matter if you start by paying yourself $5, or if you start by looking at your credit card statement, or if you start by following Meg on social media so you can see what she teaches, or if you start by just, I don't know, looking at your checkbook. Don't even open it yet. Do people still have checkbooks? Like, so you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't actually matter where you start, what you start with. It just matters that you start with something, because nothing that you're going to do today is going to be perfect. And it's not actually going to move the needle. Like, you're not going to get in shape in one day. You're not going to save for retirement in one day. But I know,
Right.
unfortunately.
There
But
goes
what
my
does,
plan.
yeah, but what does matter is that you got started
Yeah.
today. So it doesn't matter what you
Yeah.
do, just do something.
No, I mean, I think that's 100% true, probably in every area of life. And I think what's so important about what you just said is that I think so often, whether it's fitness or health or money, we think about it as sort of this separate thing that we have to figure out or fix or deal with, instead of thinking about, like, how do we actually incorporate this into our lives in a way that makes it feel far less intrusive and far less like this big thing we have to deal with over there. And for me with fitness, that's been what has worked for me is, if there are stairs and not an escalator, I'm taking the stairs. If I'm going to a parking lot, I park as far away as possible. If I'm going, I'm grabbing a drink, I'm gonna drink water first. Like, it's all these little things, instead
Mhm.
of I have to work out 45 minutes a day and I have to eat, do all these things that feel really hard and overwhelming. And I think with the money stuff, it's the exact same thing. To your point, it's like, can I just look at the credit card statement? Can I just open the accounting system? Can I just, check my cash flow? Whatever it may be. I agree, it really doesn't matter, because so much of the work we do is about changing those behavior. Well, understanding those behaviors first and then changing them if they need to be, and focusing on making financial comfort and our relationship with money a much healthier part of our current lives, instead of it this big scary thing that's outside of it. So thank you. I really appreciate your thoughts on that. Now I'm
Yeah.
going to wrap us up, which stinks because we could talk about this for hours. But as I do, I would just love to hear kind of any final parting thoughts from you, to leave with our community? And then, of course, please tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, my final thoughts would be I've been there, that if you are just starting out, I've been there. And just by listening to this podcast, you are in the right place because Meg and her team, they truly are a gem to help you. So listen to them, do what they say. I promise it works. But also, whether or not you take their advice, which you should, but even if you don't, just start with something. That is if you take nothing else away, just start, do something, do one thing. And it's okay to be easy. Like, it's allowed to be easy. It doesn't have to be hard for it to be effective. So that's my one takeaway.
I love it. And where can people find you if they want to work with you? Because you are incredible and truly one of the best coaches I have ever worked with, because you focus on behaviors and making things accessible and not plans and trends.
Yes, you can find me Running with Bacon. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. That's my website. I'm on YouTube. I have a free workout plan if you're interested in getting started. Full disclosure, it is kind of hard because it's a workout plan, but I will be there guiding you every step. So, but I have that available too if you're looking to get started. So, yes.
I absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful to you for having this conversation and sharing, sharing your thoughts on habit building with us, because it's such an important part of who we are and how we seek the change that we want to see in this world. And so I'm just really grateful for your time and your presence and everything that you do for our community.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening to this episode of Disrupt Your Money. And we will be back again next week with another scintillating conversation. And in the meantime, I hope you are working to disrupt your own money.
Thanks for listening to Disrupt Your Money. If you have a money question you'd like answered in a future episode, go to disruptyourmoney.com. To support the podcast, please rate and review it wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want access to all of my free templates, checklists, resources, and guides, click the link for the Biz Money Library in the show notes.